Hey everybody, welcome to my second video presentation for the pre-launch of my new book, Functional Harmonic Concepts. Big thanks goes out to everyone for all your great comments on my launch blog and my YouTube channel after the last video presentation. If you haven't seen the pre-launch video number 1, I've linked it to this video so you can go back and watch it another time. Now, in the last video, I talked a little bit about the content of the book and the importance of developing a solid foundation with the building blocks of the Western music major-minor tonal systems, understanding chord construction and their relationship to both diatonic and non-diatonic harmony, dominant seventh chords that are related to the key but contain different notes that are outside of the key, and then putting it all together with exercises, etudes, and ear training drills for immediate application. Now, as most of you already know, I've been around a while and I have a historic track record of playing with top name professionals from all over the world. I'm sure you've already checked out my bio, and as a result have had a successful career as a bass player, composer, and a teacher. I came to a certain point in my career where I started to get more serious about teaching because as I looked around at what was being taught, I realized that so much was being left out of bass education and really music education in its entirety. Since I was 18 years old, I've always studied music and have had the opportunity to study with some of the best jazz teachers on the planet. So I've actually had 40 years of formal music education. One of the deepest things that I've discovered over that period of time is that nobody can actually teach somebody else. And here's the dirty little secret that most teachers won't share with you. You have to be able to teach yourself, or you're not going to get anywhere. Now, I can help you save time, and I can also help you get there quicker, but I'm really just the tour guide. So I don't consider myself to be some kind of a guru or a master, just a friendly drill sergeant to enable your best potential. Now, one of the key aspects of this book that separates it from other harmony books is that it follows a logical progression in order for you to develop the ability to hear what you're playing and understand what you've heard. Too many people try to learn this kind of material from a theoretical standpoint only, and the results are often dangerous because you won't be able to use the material on the bandstand. So everything in this book is based on application and being able to hear what you play. Now, what I want to do with you today is just go through with you a little bit about what's in the book. And we're just going to quickly go over this chapter, which is chapter 18 on tritone substitution. Now, some of you might know what's going on with this and others may not know so much. So just bear with me. For everyone, there's probably something that you'll be able to get out of this, even if you've seen this concept before. So if we go through this, a tritone is the interval of the augmented fourth, also referred to as flat 5 and sharp 11. And it gets its name, the tritone, because of its equal intervallic distance of 3 whole steps. A tritone is the only interval besides the octave that remains the same when inverted. Therefore, F sharp is the tritone of C, and C is the tritone of F sharp. The interval of a tritone divides an octave exactly into 1/2, and a tritone exists in every major scale between the 4th and the 7th degrees. There's only 2 chords in major harmony that contain both of the 4th and the 7th degrees, and that's the 5/7 chord and the 7 minor 7 flat 5. In every 5/7 chord, a tritone exists between the 3rd and the flat 7 of the chord. These notes are known as guide tones and define the chord's quality. There's an immediate connection with the 3rd and the flat 7 in relation to the dominant 7th chord and its most common substitution chord, the tritone substitute. A tritone substitute is created by moving the bass note of a G7 chord to a new chord a tritone away, which will become D flat 7. And we're kind of looking at this in the key of C. So G7 would be 5/7. The 3rd and the flat 7 of the G7 invert and become the flat 7 and the 3rd of the D flat 7. So if we take a look at this, you'll see that the 3rd and the flat 7 for the G7 and the D flat 7 are exactly the same, but just reversed, just turned around. The third of the G7 is identical to the flat 7 of the D flat, which is B is the third of the G7. C flat is the flat 7 of the D flat 7. So we have that little enharmonic relationship going on there. The flat 7 of the G7 is the same of the third in the D flat 7. So F equals F. And if you look at the diagram there, you'll see that you've got these two chords, and I've written this in bass clef so you can actually learn these chord voicings and play through these. And it's probably a good idea to learn that and then play it up the octave, because it'll probably sound pretty muddy on your bass played there. But I wrote it out like that so you can get more of a visual understanding of what's going on. Therefore, you can now substitute any dominant seventh chord for another dominant seventh chord, a tritone or a flatted fifth away from each other. The fact that these two chords have identical thirds and sevenths and possess strong root motion validates the interdependency of these two chords working together as substitutions for one another. The D flat 7 is therefore a substitute for G7. Now, even though the sub 5/7 is derived from the 5/7 of the moment, in Roman numeral analysis you would label this as sub 5/7 resolving to the one chord. This not only allows for substitution, but also permits the two related dominant seventh chords to be used in succession. So I could have 5/7 go into sub 5/7, go into 1 major 7, or I could have sub 5/7 go into 5/7, going to 1 major 7. Okay, if we look at this next page, we can see that I've got this box written, and we call this a sub 5/7 box, and I've done this in the key of C. So you can see where it's resolving to, C major as the one chord. And so if we look at this, what's really important about these tritone substitutes is to understand that before any one of those substitutes, you can have a related two chord. And really, it's just kind of a blanket rule throughout the study of this book that before any 5/7 chord in a harmonic progression, or any dominant seventh chord for that matter, you're going to actually have the option to have a 2 minor 7 or a related 2 minor 7 placed in front of that 5 chord. So you can see how this works here with this sub 5 box. I've got the D minor 7 on the top going to the G7, then it resolves to C major. Or I could have D minor 7 going to D flat 7 going to the C. Or I could have the A flat minor 7 going to D flat going to C, or the A flat going to the G to the C. Now, when we do this in real application, you can see I've written some chord progressions below. There's 4 chord progressions here. It's not the only combinations you can come up from with this box, but this will get you started. We've just got a 2-5-1, and then you've got a 2 with a sub 5 to the 1, and then you've got a 2, and then I've got the sub 5 with the related 2. Now, when you would see this, you want to visualize these in measures here, that the original 2-5-1 is 1 bar of D minor 7 to 1 bar of G7 to 2 bars of C major 7. The same thing with number 2. It's going to be 1 bar for the D minor 7, 1 bar for D flat 7, and then 2 bars for C major 7. Now, when we get to 3, we're going to have 1 bar of D minor 7, and then we're going to have 1 bar of the A flat minor 7 to D flat 7, and then go into 2 bars of the C major 7. So now we have these bars where the A flat minor 7 to the D flat 7 are. Each one of those chords is worth 2 beats. And this really provides a cool tension within your bass lines and your solos when you sort of apply substitute dominance like this. And then I can do the same thing where I've got the D minor 7, and then I've got A flat minor 7 for 2 beats, G7 for 2 beats, and then 2 bars of C major 7. one of the biggest questions I get about this is that when playing bass lines, does the piano player have to change his chords to suit this? In a jazz scenario, no, because you're really playing the same chord with a different root note. And good comping musicians that are playing guitar or piano in jazz settings are not going to be playing the root note in their voicings, and they will stay away from that, and certainly a root note on the bottom. So it's very important to know that you could freely use this, but with any sort of substitution set, you never really want to overdo this stuff. That's a big mistake, is overdoing it. It's just adding a little bit of spice, just a little bit of garlic on top of what you're actually dealing with in the original set of changes, okay? As you get better and better, you can get more into sort of substitutions, and certainly with your solos, but with bass lines, you want to be slightly just cognizant of what the original changes are. But note that I can use this stuff all over the place tastefully, and I can do it freely without it stepping on the piano player, the guitar player. That's a really important thing. As I say here, and leading us into these exercises here, the following set of exercises will enable you to hear, understand, and apply the tritone substitution concepts in walking bass lines. So this is paramount. This introduces the concept of inside, outside, inside. Notice that what I mean by that is we got the D minor 7, that's an inside sound. We create tension over the 5-7, that's the outside sound. And then we come back inside to the 1 chord. Now that is a secret that many people don't understand about playing over 2-5-1s, both with your bass lines and your solos. Because a lot of guys go, well, if the chord symbol says it's just a G7, does it mean I can never play like altered stuff over that? No, because it's all available. And, you know, I sort of explained the chord tensions in this book. And what a lot of people don't realize, that dominant 7th chord is the one chord you can almost play anything on. So out of the chromatic scale, like, you know, you can resolve to 10 notes out of the chromatic scale on the dominant 7th chord. Other chords have a little bit more discipline. So you could really go to town by creating tension, momentary tension, and then release back to something very inside over the 1 chord. So notice how I described this is that the D minor 7 and the C major 7 act like bookends to represent the inside sound, and the tritone substitution combinations act as the outside element. Now notice how I've included these exercises, and these are as much ear training exercises than any of the sort of isolated ear training exercises that are included in this book. That's something that's very important for you to realize, that you can sort of sit and listen to the MP3s where we're doing specific ear training drills, but if you never put that together on your instrument, it'll always be compartmentalized. So everything you do when you practice must be considered an ear training exercise. So that's another secret that no one talks about. So what we start off with in exercise 1 is a 2-5-1 exercise, which is a voice leading exercise. And notice how I arpeggiate the D minor 7 and then play down from the C, which is the 7th, to the 3rd of the G7, and play down the scale. So I'm going D, F, A, C, and over the G7, I'm going B, A, G, F. So again, from the 3rd down to the 7th, and then into the 3rd of the C major, to the root 3, 5, and then root 7, 5, 3. So the whole line goes like this. Okay, now in exercise 2 is where we apply the tritone substitution to this concept. And notice how I do the same thing on the D minor 7. And now that B is actually the 7, and I arpeggiate down the D flat 7, and then resolve to the C major 7. So listen to that again. Now, if you're like most people, the first time you play and arpeggiate that D flat 7 going down, you're going to go, oh, I sound like I was playing the wrong notes. But then as you start to play that 2 or 3 times, it sounds fine. But what you're doing with that D flat 7 is you're just creating this sort of outside sound. Notice what the notes are that in relation to G7. I've got 3, I've got flat 9, I've got the flat 7, and then I've got the sharp 11 in relation to G. That's the flat 7, 5, 3, and the root of the D flat 7 equals the 3, flat 9, the flat 7, and the sharp 11 of the G7. So very important to understand how we're creating tension there. Now note here how in exercise 3 we create a little bit more tension by putting that A flat minor 7th in front. Now note that that second bar is each chord is 2 beats. Here's the Joe Hubbard rule for playing over chords with 2 beats is play the root on the first beat of the chord and then play a chromatic approach note above or below the following root. And note that's how this whole thing works. So note that in the bar 3 we're resolving to the 3rd so that I'm playing that chromatic approach above the 3rd, which happens to be the 3rd over the D flat, so it just kind of works out like that. But listen to this. Beautiful sounding line, and really kind of adds just that little bit more angularity to what we're doing. And then we finish off by going D minor 7, then we have A flat minor 7 to the G. So I've got the related to of the sub 5, and then we're actually going to 5. So what we have here is this. Now I kind of changed my own rule up on me on that one, because there I just played over the A flat, the root in the 5th, and then going down to the root and the flat 7, and then resolving into the 3rd over the C major 7. So there are other things that you can do over those chords that last for 2 beats. Now, as it says here, it's important to understand that any dominant 7th chord, despite its function, can have a tritone substitute. This applies to secondary dominants and extended dominants as well as diatonic 5 chords. So the key to being able to recognize tritone substitutes is that they will always appear a half step above the chord to which they're resolving to. So by the time you make it through all 29 chapters of this book, you're going to have a more applicable knowledge base than if you had a degree in music. I know some of you guys might be a little bit skeptical, but I've witnessed firsthand what is being taught in the lamestream music education systems today, and most of it will not prepare you for the real world. Of course, some of you are what I call Swiss cheese guys, but don't worry about that. All we need to do is fill in all of those empty holes, and you're going to be just fine. Now, I can just hear some of you saying that you've already gone through some of these topics, so you can already do this or that. But the way this book is really going to help you is by understanding that you'll probably fit into one of these 3 categories. You've already been exposed to a small percentage of the material in this book, mostly the major harmony topics, or with some of the further developed topics, you may have seen or heard of them before, but been just a bit confused or never really fully understood how they worked. And for the rest of you, some or all of the material will be completely brand new. So I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I'm going to send you one more video before the launch of the book where I'm going to break down the specific contents of the entirety of the book and then offer you a deal that you won't be able to refuse. So what I want you to do in the meantime is leave some more comments on my launch blog at joehubbardbass.com, and also post some comments on the upcoming release of the book on social media and any of the bass guitar forums that you frequent. Until next time, practice smart, work hard, and play creatively.